Hey, good afternoon. Let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Yi Trey. I'm a faculty member in material science engineering and also in the energy science engineering, crossing two schools, the Dole School of Sustainability and the engineering school. I used to serve as the director of Preco Institute for Energy. Recently means about a year ago, transitioned into the Stanford Sustainability Accelerator, sitting inside the Dole School. Today, it's super exciting for me to introduce Mathias, our speaker, to share with us his vision. Let me mention a little bit background about Mathias. I started to get to know him since last night, less than 24 hours. However, these 24 hours, I learned a lot about him. He currently serves as the CEO and president of International Motors, and also sitting in the executive board of Triton, and having a huge knowledge on sustainable mobility, not just on the topical area, but he has also very rich experience globally. He told me last night he has been to probably 80 countries doing meaningful things. I say, wow, 80 countries, that's a lot. So I still need the next 25 years to catch up. And Stanford is planning the sustainable mobility centers. This is a very exciting vision. Since about a couple of years ago, we have a whole list of faculty, and particularly Marco and Ram, working with our managing director, Jimmy, working with Liang, and to really see, giving Stanford already have multiple pillars of our car centers from the past, our Storage X initiative, our Bits and Watts initiative. We have the whole energy ecosystem. We have more than 200 faculty working on energy related technology, economics, and policy. So we need to build a really big vision. How do we enable future sustainable mobility? We are so happy to have Mathias right here today to share his vision with us. After his presentation, I'm going to have Q&A, a little bit fireside chat, but I do want to have our audience. I see our faculties, I see many students right here, our postdocs. Feel free to ask questions. And through this discussion, we can shape our vision into a direction that's better and better. With that, let me welcome Mathias to the stage to give up the speech.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I hope it wasn't an attempt to brag when I said 80 countries at all. So rather would I say I'm the one who is humbled to be here today. I mean, what I haven't done, I've never studied at such a prestigious faculty as this one I'm visiting today. I've never had a startup or driven up an own business, which many of you here have and will be doing for sure. So I have done a lot, but again, I'm very humbled to be here speaking in front of everybody here today. Actually, I had the opportunity this past Monday, well, it's 2 days ago only, to speak at the Advanced Clean Transport event in Anaheim, California. And there were about 2,500 people in the audience. And I had less butterflies then than I had now, right? Because it's another caliber of the audience. Not to speak bad about that audience, but rather speak well about this one. So I will try to take you through. For those wanting here to hear about chrome and tires and trucking songs and country, are in the wrong room. I will rather speak about what is logistics today, what is happening in this extremely exciting moment that we are at now, where the roads are starting to come together, where a lot of, let's say, research things that has been done in institutes like this are actually becoming reality at a pace never experienced before. So allow me the cliche, what's happened in the past 100 years dwarfs to what's happening now. Discussions we'll have afterwards. Very short, well, this is not even born in Sweden, raised abroad, and lived of my, well, in US it's sensitive to talk about age, so I stick on that, but plus 50 years, close to 30 years in different countries, professionally and in childhood, as said, right? But still very Swedish somewhere, and why I bring that up at a moment like this, it is because I will say that Sweden is a society which is very focused on sustainability, technology, and a lot of community and sense of responsibility. So this goes very much in the DNA of myself, in company I would ever work at, and let's say in the values and vision I have about where business belongs in society. So again, a little bit 3 points here. I will be fast on the first one because that's probably the most, let's say, off table. So just company here, just put perspective here. Yes, we are this company here and this big tree here, International. International is part of a group, which is Traton, which again, it just becomes bigger, the tree, right? Traton is the commercial division within Volkswagen. So it's a company all in all with about 650 billion dollars revenue. And also 750,000 employees. Why I say that is because the responsibility for this group to be a good corporate citizen and really lean in what this, again, everybody as consumer, but what the planet need lives very strongly through these many brands. And I'm sure some of you are looking more up to the right end of the graph here of those brands up there, but we're all represented from motorbikes to sports cars to heavy trucks, buses, you got it. Everything in automotive exists here in our group. Well, again, the company we're here at the United States was actually founded, believe it or not, more than 200 years ago. I mean, McCormick, some Americans in the room, well, it was like the harvester machine. It brought technology at that time. Harvester, Navistar, and here we are today, 2025 actually. So long history, and now let's say again, it's next time this company has heavy commercial, there's a European base, there's a Asia, this is North America, and here we are North America with plants in many states in the United States. And also a biggest plant we have is actually on the other side of the border in Escobedo, Mexico. A short little clip.
How does a company that's been around for nearly 200 years keep going? It's about attitude and grit, finding better ways to get things done. So that's what we're doing. Changing what we need to, while staying true to who we are. Because we're part of this nation's landscape. And generations and families. We built our company by working with communities to meet people where they are and help them get where they want to go. That's why we push ourselves, to move industries forward, to take care of today while preparing for what's to come, to make a positive impact on people's lives and for the planet that sustains us all. As we start a new chapter in our journey, we're new where it matters and unchanged where it matters even more. Because we're not like anybody else and never will be. We're international.
So a very well-rooted American company acquired back in 2021 by Volkswagen. So for us, a huge opportunity to bring, call it the history, the legacy, the relationships, everything that was here, and build in with technology and capital from, let's say, from Volkswagen to really pivot the journey at the timing that I just mentioned. Well, I'll come back to why this specific moment is so challenging, interesting, and offers so many opportunities. But if you just go to basics, right? I mean, this is a statement that is quite obvious just thinking about it once or twice, right? I mean, if truck would stop, society stops. I mean, a truck today in North America moves roughly 72-75% of the goods moved have been on a truck. Everything we wear, eat, build, everything around us has been moved on trucks. Continuous growth. I mean, this is a sector unquestionably will always grow. Grows with GDP, basically. So a sector growing like this, if we look into projections we have, of course, I mean, following GDP, in the coming 25 years, the growth that is needed here in today's growth model, we see that, I mean, if you look at GDP on the left axle only growing, and call it the percentage what road transport is of that, we start coming to almost a paradox that it can't continue like this. I mean, it can't continue of a number of reasons, where I would highlight starting with, you could start with the CO2 emissions from transportation is about 25% of the carbon dioxide emissions comes from transportation. Go down to trucking. Trucking is a very big part of that, 8%. This is US figures, but very representative as kind of averages. And I used to say that if you then go down even further, you look, what do our trucks and buses do out there? Well, out there per year, our products will emit as much CO2 as a medium-sized European country or a rather significant state in North America. So the first standpoint is we are part of the problem. We need to be the solution. Be conscious of that and take your responsibility that this is kind of an obligation to today and to future generations to don't let this grow, follow that growth, that the growth is there, given. We have, like every other company, intend to grow our share of that pie, but we can't do to the expense of, let's say, environment. So that's one of the big, let's say, no-goes ahead of us. And I will elaborate a little bit around both how we see the whole, let's say, system coming together that will enable this, why again, emphasizing why I think it's important for us as a multinational to be strongly connected to institutions such as Stanford, where all these disciplines exist around us when it comes to autonomous technology, digital capabilities, environmental, let's say, abilities and work being done that around battery, around different fuels. Everything is here. We just need to get this connected. And just as one, again, now I'd be very humble. I'm not an engineer, and there's engineers. I try to make it for dummies so that I can understand and explain it. Very basically, why we believe that kind of, if you see diesel efficiency, which is the simplicity, of course, offers it to be the preferred choice of today, everything developed, but still the energy efficiency is very limited compared to as we move upwards towards, let's say, electrical, the energy utilization efficiency is 3 times of diesel. So, I mean, you just start with these big numbers and work your way back to see that these are, let's say, we need to, let's say, bring this to reality, and I will walk through some of the challenges, but again, the upside opportunities are just so big and rewarding that it's worth this journey. How do we build a strategy around this, right? I mean, a strategy typical in OEM is we're going to get this much market share, we're going to do that segment, blah, blah, blah. Well, that comes further down. We raise up the perspectives of where we're heading. I won't walk you through this strategy, but our vision is these sentences. You would never have seen something like this in automotive, but this is the vision of our group and company. How can we accelerate the impact of sustainable mobility? Our role in this ecosystem, again, together with partners that never thought of before. In the room here, we have energy companies, we have utility companies, we have academia, we have legislative, we have administration. We all have our part of this, and we clearly see which ours is and how we should take it forward. Company strategy, why I put this one up is just because our 4 pillars Sustainable impact is one of them. Of course, our shareholders expect something here. And then our view of technology and future has to be cutting edge. And let's not forget, which is counterpiece to all that I do and think about in my role, is about leadership and culture and all that that embraces. But let me come down a little bit to my main, let's say, area of talks today. I do refer sometimes to when a number of years ago at a prior employer, also within commercial vehicles, within the group in Scandinavia, these thoughts started to be on the map. And of course, obvious for group today, but if you go back 10, 12 years, it was quite innovative thinking, where the letters are a bit tilted in direction here, but we would call it DEA, which I learned early in the US doesn't work that well. But it has more to do with drugs than with trucks. So and maybe that's why they shifted the direction. Why I call it DA is the sequence in time, left to right. That's how, maybe, well, some countries read the other way, so it works. But let's say if we read it from left to right, digital, table stakes. Table stakes today, I mean, it's just our capability. And Robert, my mastermind behind, let's say, the web of digital and IT will also talk about 10 minutes for you, how we prepare ourselves in that area. And then we saw, given electrification was kind of around the corner, and then somewhere very far away is autonomous. Well, this has drastically kind of moved the pieces of time here between how these areas are connected, to the extent that autonomous, which personally I kind of saw very remote 2-3 years ago, is just coming closer. And there are very good reasons for that. And we'll touch upon it, but there's a number of coinciding factors right now where, of course, technology drives technology. And when you look into autonomous development in the past, I mean, the way of processing, working with images and everything to create, let's say, the simulations, you all know all these vehicles out filming, the billions of let's say, pictures captured, all that. Of course, how AI is speeding this up is it's just taking off. Just unimaginable way just 2-3 years ago is what's happening now. Electrification does have significant challenges. I mean, we can all list a number of them around, let's say, grid, charging, chicken or the egg, what comes first, adoption, range fear, all of that. All of these are very manageable and worked through. And I will touch upon how we approach electrification, considering that we see that this is the way forward. And again, I know there's people in the room, I'm not saying electrification is the only way. There are several performance steps also where alternative fuels and many things will play in just to give our customers, the market, the needs they have at the right moment. But electrification is not a silver bullet, it's much more fractional than that. But if we just starting to look in some examples around electrification, we see, for example, when we plot movement of trucks in the United States, we see that 20% of the corridors cover 80% of the heavy haulage traffic. It's still a lot of highways, but it's 20%. And along these highways, some of them, like specifically this one, is also very favorable to autonomous deployment, both regulatory, climate-wise, and everything. So we have I would say, a close to perfect setup here in the US, which you will not find in other countries. And we are in very, very deep conversations, both with authorities and companies that are starting actually to, among other things, buy land, secure grid, and all of that along these main routes. So we see, let's say, that compared to not neglecting the complexity, but compared to what's already happening in cities around us with robo-taxis, and all of you young here have rode in these different options of driverless taxis, that's much more complex than what's out here. But of course, it's big rigs, it's heavy, it's long distances, but technological-wise, regulatory, It's not very far away. We are doing intense piloting in this area, and starting end of this year, we're going to start scaling it with still, let's say, controlled piloting, and we see commercial viability from 27 and on in autonomous trucking. So why am I talking so much about this at this point? Well, because if you look, many of these dots need to be connected. I stole your little one-liner there, but you can use it later. Connecting the dots, so you can elaborate that later on. But some of these dots need to be connected. And why does autonomous favor the case of electrification? Well, clearly, because electrification, the energy efficiency that I just talked about, is so much favorable. The cost of electrical energy is so much lower than we find in diesel. And when we have these heavy vehicles basically working 24/7, there's no other alternative to reach favorable TCO, which today is not close. When these dots connect and we have autonomous routes with charging station around, there's no need for, let's say, to stand and cheering and believing and not even talk about environment. It stands alone, and then you have the, let's say, the ecosystem we need here. So is all of this solved? Of course not. But my point, what I'm trying to say here is that there are cases here and now that are very, very favorable to really electrify. These are examples of our today product lineup. And just a parenthesis, the company was bought 2021. These are products here today. You look at these and you'll see them in 3-4 years, you will not recognize them. There's a lot of also technology coming in and kind of, let's say, being purpose-built BEV vehicles coming out. Here we're still working with what's out there. How can we make something that kind of electrify the current platforms? But right now we are developing, investing heavily as a group to have fully, let's say, built up, bottom-up, better electrical vehicles, which will further, let's say, enhance a lot of, let's say, of performance when it comes to, let's say, weight, battery, aerodynamics, etc. But let's not complain and try to sell what we don't have, right? That's typical salesman. You're always good at selling what you don't have. This is what we have, and it really fulfills the needs of certain segments today. School buses, well, the Americans, one of you have been, for me, it was a movie thing to see them, right? The school buses. I didn't think that I was going to work for the biggest school bus manufacturer in the country, which we are actually. So we do about 16,000 of these a year, and today 2,000-3,000 are electrical, which start being relevant. Medium, you're into cities distribution. We have, let's say, a palette of customers that are also independently of the administrative wins of believing or not. There's a substantial group of customers that have long-term commitment that are still very inclined and having heavy discussions around this. I won't be name-dropping customers, but I mean, what an Amazon, a FedEx, a UPS, think of these. I mean, they crossing US, but it's cases in which we will have customers that are intermodal, move goods on to be, let's say, peeled, and there's here is just supposed to be a backdrop when I continue talking, which I wasn't prepared of. I was waiting for sound here. But how do we see today, how do we work with autonomous today? Well, we clearly see our role in this whole ecosystem. If you go back 5 years, 10 maybe, OEMs would stand up and say, we're going to develop our own batteries. We're going to be the ones owning the transport system, the autonomous, and we will hold the ecosystem. Well, that was very wishful thinking. Of course we can't do that. There are so specialized, extremely capable companies in all of this. And again, hats off for this institution that has created and founded many of them, that we today work with partnerships. We are so clear what is our role in this value chain. We're making a software-defined vehicle that is the foundation over which other companies set up the autonomous capabilities on it, level 4, which is driver out, basically. And those companies are US-based companies that are so successful in what they're doing. We work on software-defined vehicles. We also work with companies in this part of United States. So again, it's about, let's say, focus on what you're good at doing and rely on close partnership. It's a quotation from another company, but it's not patented, that today's partnership is the new leadership. And very clear that is for us. I mean, not aspiring to be something we aren't, but really focus on the cutting edge technology that is available. And here's where I want to come back to just mention. There's no place like US in this. There's no place. And the revolutionary, I would say some years ago when people over-complexed going electrical, I say electrical is just the evolutionary part of this. Revolution is when these dots come together. What does this mean when this come together? All these aspects of electrical, autonomous, software-defined vehicle. You will have mobility, logistics that is, somebody asked before, what does it look like in 20 years? It's a zero emission, it's zero accidents, it's an efficiency that you will find of constant deliveries of goods. Some of you get it when you press Amazon and get your stuff in 3-4 hours, but think that through the whole value chain. Think of smaller units moving 24/7 without drivers, and it's not far away. It's 20, 25 years away in these stepwise approaches that we see here. So what does that mean? I gave the example earlier today. 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, not much more, I think it was about 10 years ago, we looked into the China logistics. And we saw that the total cost of logistics in China was about 15% of the GDP. While we in Western Europe and United States were in the range of 7.5 to 8.5, give or take. So, I mean, what China has done, starting with building out, of course, the infrastructure, which train lines in 2 years, highways in 2 years, and all of that, was the fundamental basis. Then data layers. I've been there when 7-8 years ago on a market where freight was sold with paper wavings and like a stock exchange in New York 40 years ago. That was how freight was traded. They were the first ones, platforms of freight, and now putting the layer of electrical deployment, which they have. They are today lower than we are in this part of the world. That they managed to do in 10 years. My point is that these, 7.5, 8% of cost of GDP will get down to below 5. We're releasing value, creating value for society and for all of us, and remembering this coming with zero emissions and zero fatalities, which is, let's say, only those two would be enough. But it's truly a win-win-win we have around here. But of course, I'm the speaker, somebody has to do it. So Robert, why don't you introduce a little bit the thoughts around how we work, let's say, to prepare ourselves to be able to, let's say, leverage value of all this data and that we have ahead of us.
Sure, thanks, Mathias. It's always challenging to follow your boss in a quick presentation, right? He's such a great speaker, engaging guy, right? And plus, he's been to 80 countries. I've only been to 40 countries, right? So I still have some work to do here. But you've lived everywhere. I lived there everywhere, right? But this is the 15th city I'm working in outside of Chicago. So I've been in a lot of different industries. Been very fortunate to be able to do that. But let me share some viewpoint on digital and IT. I mean, we're in Silicon Valley, so we need to talk about digital a little bit. So this chart represents a software complexity and maturity of organization over time. I remember back in 1999, you guys may think I'm a really old guy by now. I was working in Sunnyvale for a startup, right? Even back then, in the first evolution of .com boom, there was always a software complexity and talent shortage, organizational maturity shortage at the time. Now, layer in digital transformation by these companies, layer in Gen AI revolution, layer in data center booms. Now you have much more software-driven enterprises that are out there, yet we still have problems around having organizational maturity to support that journey. So this is the reality. Maybe not the case for some of the high-tech companies in the Valley, but for the most part, when you look at traditional industries, you have this problem out there as a big statement. Now, within international, in order for us to organize all of our digital, IT, and AI efforts, we set this building blocks, right? These are the building blocks that my organization within Mathias's enterprise organize our efforts on how we go about transforming ourselves into digital, how do we get AI journey going, and so forth. To the left, this is our mission statement for my digital IT and AI function. It's all about customer centricity. It's all about future ready. It's all about sustainable digital solutions they create to the market. Now, to organize that, these are the building blocks that we have multi-year roadmaps, capability build out, collaboration efforts on. For me, when I went to our board and to Mathias, I said, we don't do any transformation work unless we have a point of view on next generation cybersecurity. When I say cybersecurity, this is not just your laptops or your mobile phones. Those are important. But at the same time, you remember the map that Mathias shared with you. We have manufacturing plants. We have warehouses that are connected. So operational technology security is really important, let alone all these trucks that are going to be connected, data-driven, product security becomes really important. So we have a very intentional investment view and thesis around cybersecurity, number one. Above it, since we've been around for close to 200 years, imagine some of the ways of working change we have to go through. Yes, we have pockets of excellence, pockets of agility, but at the same time, when you look at our enterprise as a whole, are we really agile to meet the market demands 100%? We're not there yet, right? So we have to have a very intentional view on changing our ways of working within the enterprise through agility, through design thinking, through co-innovation, through a lot of different things that's coming down the pipeline. Above it, we have many, many legacy systems. Obviously, we need to modernize those things, but at the same time, we have to be very intentional about building out new capability at the same time. I called it the two speeds operating model because you cannot spend 5-10 years cleaning up your foundation. You need to do that in a short amount of time, but at the same time, you need to build out new capabilities. So we're truly actually operating in two speeds in building out the integrated platforms. Above it, we also need to keep an eye on new and emerging tech. Mathias is reminding me almost on a weekly basis, saying, hey, we have the right to win in this market. Digital is going to be, I know he said it's a table stake, but at the same time, it is going to be a differentiator in the market. So we need to be very intentional about looking at new technologies, what that means to our company, and how do you apply it? How do you prove it out? How do you scale it up? Okay? So those are the 4 stacks that you're seeing there. At the end of the day, if you only do that, this is only doing technology for technology's sake. At the end of the day, we need to be able to produce output that we can measure. Number one, this is a pretty easy, obvious one to the right, which is driving operational efficiencies through the work that you do. Imagine Gen AI. Imagine agentic AI. Things of that nature are designed to deliver a lot more operational efficiencies to the market. But if you stop there, you're probably talking about Gen 1, 1999-ish IT organization, which we're not. Now, we need to move beyond that by enabling our business functions to be able to create new digital products and services very rapidly that are customer-centric, future-ready, and sustainable. And at the same time, make sure we have an eye towards creating new sources of revenue through the digital foundation that we never imagined possible. Of course, we're going to be working with Traton, which is our group structure. We have great brands like Scania, MAN, Volkswagen, Truck and Buses that are doing similar work. So we are doing a lot of bi-directional collaboration to make sure we can be relevant and speedy. And at the top, as Mathias talked about, there are 4 strategic intents that we have. Okay? And then this is a quick slide on some of the software AI-driven areas that we are going after. Software-defined vehicles, developer workbench, and using AI and data for autonomous driving. Again, looking at different ways of approaching a common problem in the industry. One last slide that I'll touch on is the co-innovation model, which is all about driving innovation not only within the 4 walls of international, but being able to drive innovation with our ecosystem of partners, universities, startups, big tech, whatever that may be. being able to have a very intentional view on co-innovation agenda, making sure that we have an ecosystem of partners. We have a very short sprint in which we experiment and build. My hypothesis is that if we do this about 4 or 5 sprints right, you're going to have a pretty robust minimum viable products to launch. Okay? At the end of the day, this is a new model of work that we are going to be implementing. Now, one last plug is that I know we have our summer internship program, which is completely filled this year. But next year, if you guys are interested in solving this commercial trucks AI-related problems, feel free to reach out.
Well, I'm going to just round it off here now so we could go to the part here where Yi is going to grill me. But I promised if you say difficult questions, I'll double it up and ask you some questions. So I hope you'll be kind here. Looking into, again, just a historical picture here. We used to, it's a bit blurry here, right? But you get the point here. If you look there's horse cartridges. This is the Fifth Avenue, New York, and there's one car here, right? It says it's Easter 1900, and then the same street taking a picture 13 years later. I think even the horse is gone here. There might be some standing in some corner, but it all became cars. I mean, this is kind of just to illustrate, I mean, a challenge at that time, thinking that, well, cars, I mean, you can't have cars. I mean, where will you fill up gas? I mean, who will, I mean, the list against that was as long as we have today versus, let's say, the adoption to EVs. Does that say that in 13 years everything is electrical? Well, I cross fingers and hope so. Might take a bit longer time. It's much more complex today. It's going to happen on its own merits over time. And otherwise, we stand in this impossible crucifix in which we just see kind of we need to bend this curve of the CO2 over time because GDP will continue, bumps on the road. This looks very straight up. We won't be like that. It will be curvy road of GDP. Transport needs follow the GDP. The red line cannot continue following or even running ahead of the growth as it's done in the past 100 years. So this is a zoom out, trying to simplify the purpose of everything we're doing to live in a cleaner, safer, and a better environment for future yourselves and for future generations. And again, international, Traton, Volkswagen has a role to play, and we are doubling down and strongly committed to that. So thank you. Thank you for attention.
It's very exciting to see the vision of International Motors and also the strategy. DEA. That's what IRA call as drug enforcement agency. But let me give you a better interpretation of DEA also as a EAD. Hi, EAD to international students. What does this mean to you? Do you know? Peter?
Employment authorization.
That's right, employment authorization document.
Oh.
When I see EAD right there as an immigrant, I say, I finally can work right here legally. Under the current situation of federal government, this is very important, very important. So remember EAD. Next time use EAD, not DEA. Autonomous first. That also works. Yeah. So that was a joke. So let me start by asking serious questions. And I mentioned connecting the dots. Actually, this morning, when you and Ira were having the fireside chat, I was just Ira Ehrenpreis. Ira Ehrenpreis is the chair of Pre-Court Institute Advisory Council. And he's sitting in the board of Tesla. We have seen the transition of from gasoline car to electric car. And he has a lot of wisdom right there. So while sitting right there listening to your fireside chat, I was thinking, I said, yeah, many things happen in a way. I quote one of the, I think, heroes for many people in Silicon Valley right here is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, in roughly in 2005, Stanford commencement, I think that was 2005, Just go listen to his speech. That's the best commencement speeches I ever heard. Life is about connecting the dots. So many innovation, many big things happen. It's actually through connecting the dots. When you connect automobile with batteries, you electrify automobile. You put in autonomy with the car. You put in digital with the car, right? You have this whole thing all linked together. Matthias, I want to pick your wisdom, over your career. First, what are the examples about connecting the dots beyond you just show?
Wow, that was a tall question.
Sorry to give you a really tough question.
And it's right. I mean, because we always, it's good to reflect sometimes where you are kind of in life and professional, right? And I'm not talking about career and a corporate ladder. That's irrelevant and very uninteresting as soon as you pass 30 years of age. It's more like, okay, what am I fulfilling, right? What is happening around where I feel that in my role and with my teams, etc., we can do this difference. And of course, you can't say that everything up until today wasn't relevant, but it was always about smaller steps. I've been in cases to, let's say, work into countries where the basic fundamentals of transport and the needs weren't there, right? So you would those dots were fulfilling as such, right? How do we get bus transport into, let's say, a Latin American country like Colombia, which was one case I experienced working there, which wasn't at site, how do we help work in infrastructure? So very these stepwise things, which was connecting dots, but on a completely other level of complexity than today. Today, what is happening again, you like I said, the DEA, right? I mean, you would just start it as something chronological, sequential at a point. And that's often what happens when these big changes happen. It is not chronological and sequential. It is a cosmos of dots moving around that need to be connected. And really, again, if you allow me, second time I do it today in our conversation yesterday, when I asked you about looking upon your experience here for, is it 25 years at Stanford?
20 years.
20 years. 20 years at Stanford, how you saw where things were standing today compared to, let's say, through that journey. And you said a lot of things that are happening today, of course, Stanford was looking on 15 years ago. I would say probably even further back. But us, call it industry, we were not there. Now it's coming to deployment and going to real. So it is now is an incredible moment in all of this, where we need all this academia, like I said before, all these stakeholders, because what's in value in everything that can be, put together, these dots, can happen in a period no longer than 15, 20 years. Yeah. And very, very gradual, very clear improvements along the way. We talk level 4 autonomy, right? I mean, we see this, everybody moving around, small, like I said, for many of our customers today, 5,000 people die of truck accidents in North America today. They are saying, bring whatever, level 2+, bring this. How can you bring stepwise approaches to work on these, let's say, society problems that we have today? So my point is, it's just beautiful that you can have this vision coming around, and we will be wrong in many things, but along the road, there'll be constant delivery of value. So, did I answer your question?
I think in certain ways. So you mentioned. So let's continue. You mentioned, zero emission, zero death or zero accident as your 20 right here. This morning when Ira mentioned, double bottom line. This is your double bottom line. Yeah. Maybe you can brand it this way.
Yeah, there's zero accidents, zero emission. But I can't say zero efficiency gain, right? So it doesn't work that way. So there was efficiency and productivity in all this. I have to
can say zero inefficiency.
There you go, zero waste.
Zero waste, yeah. Come back to connecting the dots. Jimmy, the Sustainable Mobility Center, it's actually connecting the dots story as well.
Yes.
Stanford has a bits and watts EV50 program. Storage X, or that's on the batteries. We have this, I mentioned earlier, of the car center. That's the focus on autonomous. So now bring this together, adding bigger vision. That's our SMC.
Yes.
Thank you for being our major partner on SMC. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper about this EAD or DEA. Let's look at the electrification first. What's your judgment on, you think the current battery technology is sufficient to enable this vision? Let's look at the E first, because I work on E, sorry, I favor E. So
Yeah, good choice.
my first name is E also. So.
There you go. All good things come in three, right? So we have to find a third E here of some. But yes, no. Today's batteries won't cut the cheese here, right? I mean, but again, I must say I'm so humble in the room here, right? Because there's so many people here with so high knowledge. So I might be slipping on, let's say, the knowledge level here in detail, but I do have the opportunity and privilege to be, let's say, enough close to the sector of let's say, batteries and energies to get up, let's say, insights of what we see this looking. Just look back 5-7 years and think 5-7 years ahead with the speed things are going. We have completely different solutions worked on. And you are one of the many that are doing that, right? So I think, but we do have, that's why we see these kind of, let's say, layers of onion that I spoke before. With what we have today, we can do a lot. Take the example, I take the school bus. It's an easy one, right? I mean, these buses do 60, 70 miles a day. They go out, pick up the kids in the morning, work for 2-3 hours, then park for 3-4 hours and go out and do the run again. You don't need much battery technology to that. You do need to use these batteries in a smart way to be vehicle to grid, the hours they're not working, how can you make it more business and kind of make the TCO out of it. So, and then of course we show the EMV. Why do we show that? It's shorter range, etc. The big bores that we had to the left, further left outside here that are going to do the 500-600 miles. But I spoke here with some students on lunchtime. You know, these trucks, they have to do, I mean, as today with driver in, the driver after 5.5 hours needs to rest for 45 minutes. You need to make them run 5.5 hours and then be charged in 45. So that's a challenge to you. I mean, as long as you do that, megawatt chargers with the efficiency you have, we're not there yet, but it's not very far away.
For our students right here, you guys listen, this is research opportunity. Yeah. Well, let's look at autonomous. So this morning when Ira said he has not been driving a car for quite a while now, all using autonomous driving. On the opposite, even I own a Tesla for close to 10 years, actually 4th Tesla car right now. I have not really charged autonomous driving completely yet. So every time I feel nervous about that. So what's the status of autonomous driving? Stanford has a lot of stop sign, very energetic undergraduate student riding bike, right? So Steve Liu is right here. He's from my lab. So I think he owns a bike. So he can tell you how fast he was riding the bike. So what's the status of autonomous driving? How close we are to get to that zero, one of the zero?
Yeah, well, it's funny that the board member of Tesla at least trusts his equipment better than you. So that's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
That's a good sign. It would be worse if it was the opposite, right? Well, again, we talked about the complexity of driver situations, right? And I mean, what you can do with your Tesla today and what we see in these robo-taxis around, I mean, it's incredible and remarkable. We're looking into autonomous for trucks. Again, the thing is that these are big, they're heavy, and they're fast. And of course, that scares a bit. But the type of transport we're talking initially is very much, I mean, starting on highway, right? I mean, even let's say, you need to solve when you get off and you need to charge the truck. I mean, the automation of the charging part and kind of, okay, what happens when the truck leaves the highway and the load needs to go somewhere else? It's docking and undocking, right? It would be another tractor that pulls that load to the end destination. We won't solve it all. I mean, if we wait that, we lose too many years of let's say, not utilizing opportunities on highways. So it will be 100% safe. I mean, I have had the great opportunity to just 4 weeks ago, sit on a truck with driver in, safety driver, down the Texas Triangle, even doing some maneuvers in Austin, around in urban areas. And then 2 weeks later, did the same thing in Shanghai. And I mean, it is just incredible. So we need to work on, of course, nothing will come out without 100% safety. And we have a favorable regulatory environment in the United States that kind of is supporting this.
So what about D, the status of D? I kind of got one version of answer from Robert already.
The digital part, the digital part is, everybody has their own opinion about what is digital and what is software-defined vehicle. A software-defined vehicle, we talk about Tesla, right? And we're all highlighting, typically it's the electrical part, but I think the software part is bigger than the electrical, what they have been able to do from the beginning.
By the way, from his 2 slides, I reached the same conclusion.
Yeah.
There's a lot more room to integrate software, digital
totally.
into the
So,
transportation.
what happens is, it's very rudimentary today, the amount of, let's say, pass car stands still 98% of the time, give or take. If you have a lot of traffic congestion, it'll be more, but that's not good time. A truck is the other way around. That should be running 95% of the time. So my point is that a truck will do 150,000 miles per year. Each truck, 10 to 12 times more than an average car. The amount of data that we collect, that is both from, let's say, the driving, the cargo and everything, it is just abundant. What value have we done of that? We're scratching the surface. There is inconsistency in data quality. We don't have yet the SDV fully developed, so we cannot really cope from it. And then at the end, what happens is you need to have user friendliness and user easiness. The layer, the middle layer there, a lot is happening. Many companies in this area, some companies in this area, the one that cracks that nut, that makes, so to say, the Android for all of this data to be within, to the driver, from all this data input, you can be the sponsor of future building in this faculty if you do that. So,
why don't we open the floor to folks' questions
yes,
right
please.
here? Undergrad Steve Liu first, with the guy riding bike. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mathias, for an incredible presentation. I learned a lot about international and the challenges and potential for electrifying trucks just within the past hour. You mentioned a lot of times Tesla and other startups here. We are in the Bay Area. There's so many startups working on challenges. International has been around for 200 years. Tesla has been around for 20. There's a 10 times difference there. So I'm curious about how you would compare the advantages or the challenges that you face with the difference in age. Robert mentioned some of it's a big organization. It moves slow, but you also have a lot more infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you might have advantages that way. But on the other hand, Tesla has a lot more time spent in digitalization and autonomous driving. So how do you compare the two? And
a very relevant observation and question. And I'll try to speak for the group Volkswagen to raise it up a little bit. And the market cap of Tesla is bigger than all the other car manufacturers together, which I'm not investing in either or, but you can always say, but the magnitude of numbers are so, right? What has happened to the car manufacturers, including ourselves? Like I said before, do-it-yourself thought, right? Do-it-yourself, DIY, almost the same, DA, DIY. The DIY thought was just, off chart 7-8 years ago, put it 10. We can do this. Can they do it? We can. We're bigger, we're richer, we're smarter. We couldn't do that. So today they're reshaping, rethinking of, let's say, what the big groups are, talking Volkswagen. Volkswagen has, as some of you can have read about, has invested into Rivian. Rivian, what does Rivian have? I love the car, right? But what the asset there is the software. What is Volkswagen doing in China? Decoupling from Germany. Completely set alone, all R&D development together with Xpeng, Xpeng, I don't know to pronounce it. To bring in, who do we partner with and do things? At a speed, you cut the development time cycles by 10, both on the product development, but above all on the software capabilities. So, what do we try to do then? Of course, leverage on partnership, new leadership. but together with what the big brand as Volkswagen has, quality, finish, things that are still to some extent appealing. So hopefully we're not doomed dinosaurs. We will kind of, let's say, come back and be relevant also as we move forward. For us, commercial vehicles, the train hasn't left yet the station. I mean, the Tesla train was far ahead, but commercial vehicles, it's still kind of unexplored. So I see that as a buyer, not myself, but as a group buying this company in the United States, this is a space to be fast, two-speed agile. How do we kind of conquer this space, which again, in logistics transport, I think the value is just as big or even bigger than past cars.
Okay, hi. This is also Matthias. Good name. So the trucking industry is very fragmented. You have some big actors such as Walmart and Amazon, and then you have the small owner operator. My question is, in this vision of autonomous trucking, yes, Amazon is well equipped to operate these machines, but what's going to happen to the smaller, less sophisticated players? And if the answer is, oh, it's only going to be the larger players, what is International going to do to protect its margins? Because they're going to have more leverage.
I knew that this audience was going to put very intelligent questions.
Particularly in front of camera.
Yeah. Again, you can't say great question. Everybody has a question, but I'll say it anyway. Great question. I hope I told you also. Great question. To start with, there's nowhere in the world where there's already such a consolidation as you have in US, North America. You will have a much more fragmented in Europe and even so in China. But if you look in US, so how do we see that? That is another strong factor that favors that this will go faster in the US. I mean, when we sit, like I did Monday evening here, now I say them twice because I don't want to talk about too many customers here. I just already mentioned Amazon. I had a meeting with them Monday down in Southern California. And kind of, let's say, share where they are heading and their thinking around platform thinking, data, etc. I mean, it is just, we just need to get the dots. Yeah. Get these dots together first. And kind of, let's say, get speed, get the two-speed, deliver value to them, co-develop, and all that. You don't have anywhere else somebody's pooling and leading as you will have here. You can mention those, but you can just think of normal fleets of size of 10, 15, 20,000 vehicles. Companies listed on the stock exchange, revenues of $10, $15 billion, nowhere else. So their thinking is very aligned on this. And they see differently from what I said before, when somebody in an OEM said, oh, let's take over the whole ecosystem, we do that. Forget it. That is UPS's, that is FedEx, that is JB Hunt, whoever, these you could just name drop, whatever. So they are very clear where they are. That's going to squeeze out a lot of the smaller ones for sure. But again, this is 20, 25 years. You will start at some point. You have a lot of other companies existing today, despite some of these having become so big. There will be areas, there will be certain needs. I think ultimately of kind of jobs, with all due respect, because these are the people that drive our products and kind of, let's say, we cherish and value so much. Driving trucks, being away from home, weeks in a sense, and kind of all of that, 20, 25 years ago, you won't find people doing it. So we're kind of taking away something that I think, hopefully, and would always happen in humanity, there are other jobs created, which again, just give more, let's say, wealth to us. So we're not stepping on taking away anything from it. I think we're just part of contributing to this.
We'll take the one last question, if the audience has. Right here, one last question.
I was curious why you're starting your pilot for electrifying trucks in the Texas Triangle. When I think of Texas, I think of a conservative legislature and lots of refineries. So not the place I would think of for starting to roll out.
Three good reasons. One, yes, a lot of refineries, but also where alternative energy generation has grown fastest in US the past 10 years. Fact check me on that. But it is happening. So it's contradictions in one way, but it's actually, you'll see, the right? Correct. So that is, it's a kind of a loop there of thinking. So that's favorable. Secondly, the climate. I mean, the climate down there for electrical autonomous is just, I mean, we won't do this up in Montreal. I mean, 6 months of snow and rain and whatever. I mean, the climate is favorable to kind of, let's say, to the challenges that autonomous comes. Thirdly, you will see the regulatory part in, what should I call it, in red states around, let's say, autonomous is very favorable and very, let's say, leaning in and seeing the value of it. So I would say those three reasons. Let me add a fourth, which is in our particular case, we have a lot of, let's say, we have a lot of production plants down there in northern Mexico and in southern Texas. So a lot of this piloting has been internal flows. You know, goods moving between our plants, kind of in-house, do the homework ourselves, and kind of drive our agenda of, let's say, our footprint has been through these technologies, right? So that was 4 reasons. I'm sure there's 2, 3 on the con side, but we see the advantages bigger.
Let me ask you the final question. I guarantee it's the final one. Looking back to last night's conversation you and I had, you asked me about, do I see new things the past 20 years? Do I see new things coming? I give you an answer. I said, well, all the fundamental concepts I've seen happen in the past 20 years, maybe longer. But looking forward the next 20 years, I see many ideas, great ideas, would get implemented in a way. I use 2 words to describe. One is speed, the other is scale. And speed and scale enabled by, for example, AI.
Yes.
This will go much faster.
Yes.
Right? Even you have the same idea, but you do it in a way using AI's help. It just goes so much faster, so much bigger scale. This will make many things happen. But this is not my question. I want the students to be benefit, myself as a professor,
yes.
right? Every time I listen to a talk, I say, looks like big transformation is going to happen. What do we do in university, in our educational system? You look at the DEA, right? This transformation is happening in mobility, right? Any advice to students and faculty members right here? How do we do our education system using your eyes from industry to look at this? This is probably the toughest question.
And a long one. So
a long one.
Let's see if I can, I will start with the first part of your more statement, right? I mean, I used it the other day, and from my team, please, if I use it 3rd time, tell me stop using this. But it's intelligent people you have to quote sometimes. And it's Bill Gates in a book from in the mid-90s that you often overestimate the impact of technology short term, but you underestimate it in long term. So you overestimate what's going to happen soon in time, but you underestimate, you can't grasp, again, when the dots get connected in long time, right? So that was applicable mid-90s, and it still to a large extent has been, right? So I was speaking to a person 3 weeks ago, a very also prominent VC company or owner, founder here in the Valley, and also be around AI and technologies of today, how he saw upon this. I mean, with this kind of in the background, right? Are we overhyped now? His answer was no. 2 letters. That's a good answer. No, it is fast now. I say, well, how can you be so convinced? Again, what you also shared with me, your thoughts yesterday, it's around the why things have been slow before. At some point, it's always been humankind, people that have slowed it down and kind of not been able to leverage from it. Now it's machines leading machines, of course, supervised by people, but the speed is just kind of auto-generating, and we can project that just exponential happening soon, right? So that AI is going to be here and kind of drive so much into what we are working on now, unquestionable. To come to your question, I think, I mean, humbly, very humbly here, again, I mean, you students at the faculty like this, the cutting edge knowledge that you can experience from both academia and from business can set the foundation that very few people have the opportunity to have. Of course, I mean, that's half the game, right, to set that foundation. I think your capability, which you referred to before, apply, I mean, implement, run, and do things about it is so important. How does that come in very early into the educational system? I think this is the right place to do that. I mean, you don't run the whole academical stretch and then let's see what, and then go out and work and see what happened. You blend it in very early. You spoke yesterday about learn the basics. I mean, maybe you could, I mean, I steal again, but referring to your talk, learn the basics and then quickly go over to application and kind of, let's say, how do you take it into a so changing, let's say, a so changing business and industry environment. There, you will not meet in the companies you should apply to, you will not meet old people telling you how things are done. Like when I joined the company or whatever, 30 years ago, you were told how things worked, right? Try something else. No, it doesn't work. I've tried that before. In any company that wants to be around 10, 15 years from now, that's not the way of seeing it. Coming in, young people with input from outside, challenging, testing, learning, reiterating, that's the way to work. So, I mean, bring that in and go all in and believe in yourselves. And again, you will prosper, and you're very welcome to do that at Volkswagen International, by the way.
Is that high notes? Thank you so much, Mathias.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.